All right, we are live.
We're live. Okay.
Everybody, a couple minutes to join. We have a bit of a delay. And we will get the go-ahead when they can see us.
Okay.
John, can you see the chat box in your view?
Yep.
Okay. Let me know if anyone tells us there that we're visible. Okay.
Okay, so
They can see us. Well, hello, everybody. I am Olivia Huggins from iMethods, and I wanted to welcome you to this afternoon's breakout session. We are thrilled to have John Cotten here from St. Luke's Health System to discuss how they are using Eggplant. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items before I hand this over to John. You will be able to ask questions using the chat window on the right side of your screen, but we will wait until the end of the presentation to answer them. And all of these sessions will be recorded for later viewing in the event site. So if you have to drop off for this one or you want to catch up on another presentation that you missed today, you can just simply return to the event link and then view those recordings at a later time. But with that, I'm happy to welcome John Cotten, and it's time for you to go. Over to you, John.
Okay. Hi, my name is John Cotten. I'm a developer on the QA testing team here at St. Luke's Health System in Boise, Idaho. And I want to tell you about my journey. I started my journey into test automation back in 2014. And the initial goal was smoke testing. At the time, we had over 1,000 applications, and we're moving from Windows XP to Windows 7. And I believe the long-term benefits of being able to verify an application after each upgrade or patch would be very beneficial. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get much traction back then, and test automation never got off the ground. In 2016, I moved into the QA testing team, and my focus moved to manually testing Epic. I started using HP's UFT to start some automation, but I quickly realized UFT would not be the ideal solution to test. One of the reasons being the UFT spoke directly to the actual objects, and so I started looking at other applications that might work better for Epic as well as other applications we had. My Eggplant journey started in 2017 with trials and evaluations from Eggplant and several other companies, but it wasn't until March of 2016 that we finally got approval to purchase Eggplant. I was only able to work part-time on automation until April 2020. In June of 2020, after working a little over a year on it, I was finally able to get a full end-to-end script. In my journey, I spoke to many great Eggplant gurus, including Dave Hester, who helped me understand the possibilities with Eggplant. I went to XGM and Epic's version of a user group, if you aren't familiar with it, in May of 2019. I was hoping to talk to other health systems that had full end-to-end automation. Unfortunately, I was only able to connect with others like me that were just starting their journey. Therefore, I wanted to speak today to talk about my journey and let others like me know that full end-to-end testing in Epic is possible with Eggplant. When I moved to the QA team in 2016, I was responsible for manually testing our Macs. These are moves, adds, and changes. Anytime a clinic moves or adds a new service line or something like that. So we run our new Macs every other month. It used to take me 3 weeks to test the Macs manually, but with automation, I've dropped that to 2 weeks with the bulk of it done in a week. The majority of these departments are what I consider standard ambulatory. My definition for standard ambulatory is create a new patient, schedule a patient to a single provider, do a nurse workflow and provider workflow, and then finally billing. The first thing I did with Eggplant and Epic was to actually automate patient creation. It's a utility script. The next thing I focused on is scheduling a patient, another utility script. The patient creation is what almost every healthcare system starts with, because that's kind of their baseline to get moving. Then I spent a long time working on nurse workflow, a really long time. The nurse workflow includes recording vitals, recording the pain score, recording existing medications, marking those as reviewed, recording allergies, marking those as reviewed, recording medical history, recording family history, recording social history, mark all those as reviewed, setting a colored dot to kind of indicate where the patient is in the for our clinics, and then finally securing the chart. So one thing to keep in mind as you create your scripts, every script you create will need continual maintenance. So make sure you identify what truly needs to be tested with automation versus what could be tested in application or unit testing. At least for us, our manual scripts were designed around what the workflow is and not necessarily what needed to actually be tested. Epic has been telling the testing community to not test Epic functionality, but focus our testing on what our organizations create or change. So we decided to focus on automating only those items that derived results or are required items. So we got rid of recording existing medications, mark as reviewed, recording medical history, recording family history, and finally setting the dot. None of those currently provided any outcome, and just more scripts to maintain. Eventually, we might add some of those back in with new features that are brought into Epic. So then I worked for a long time on the provider workflow. This includes reviewing allergies, medications, and history, and placing an order, creating a note, setting a level of service, and finally signing the visit. Then finally, I worked on billing. Now I am currently on iteration 1. What does that mean, you might say? Well, basically, what I use Eggplant to do is go out and grab as much of the data elements as I can. I put those into a spreadsheet and hand that over to my RevCycle SME. For those familiar with billing, work queues can become very cumbersome, and I haven't been able to come up with an elegant solution yet, although I would like to have Eggplant spit out a pass or fail. Providing this spreadsheet to the SME takes a matter of seconds for them to review and approve. The primary issue I see with these clinics is usually an incorrect or missing place of service, which doesn't typically match the department name. So possibly in iteration 2, I'll need to have a place of service defined prior to run as a data element. I'll get into data elements in a minute, but one thing I wanted to emphasize on this on the billing piece is that we use overnight processing to run our billing, and we can force it ahead of time, and I could have automation do that, but I typically find that the claim generates more correctly when overnight processing is running. So I actually have 2 different scripts that run, and when it finishes the main all the way through the provider, it drops it into a folder, and then that is set up for the next day, and then I run a billing script the next day to pick up and provide that spreadsheet. So the next thing I've got is a great demo here. Hopefully it'll go quick. It's about 1.5 minutes. One thing that you'll see here is you have to do a lot of things to get to the point of actually creating that patient or scheduling that patient. Some things that you may recognize if you're an Epic customer is it's going through, it's setting up display templates, it's setting up the EMP record for that provider, making sure that I can log in as that provider. And then it starts going through the actual creating the patient, putting all the demographics that are needed for that patient, their address, their insurance, um, their guarantor status, whether they're an adult or a pediatric patient. Then it starts scheduling the patient. One thing to know when you're scheduling patients, and most of you probably know this, is that in order to correctly schedule a patient, you have to know what the department is and what the provider name is to schedule to, and that has to be available. You can't just make up a provider for scheduling. Same thing with admitting a patient. You need to make sure that you know which facility you're in and what department you'd like to schedule that patient is, as well as who can actually authorize to admit that patient. So, like I said, it did take about a minute and a half, and I did want to mention how fast Eggplant is, but full disclosure, this is about a 30-minute video that has been sped up. I didn't want you to have to sit here and watch this for the entire 30 minutes. But the one thing that you'll find if you don't currently have Eggplant, or if you have Eggplant and you probably struggle with this, is that Epic is designed for the user, and this is kind of what if you attended Anthony's presentation, that idea of working with the UX and not just the background elements. So, like I had mentioned, I actually worked with UFT. I created patients with UFT for a while there, and the problem with having object oriented is that I may have an element that it sees in Epic that's behind the scenes and is hidden. So the nice thing about Eggplant is it actually sees what a user would see. So the benefit of that is you're not going to test something that is not visible for your providers or your nurses. But the bad thing is that Epic is designed to run at human speed. So you have to use Eggplant to put a lot of wait times and stuff like that, just because Eggplant can go really, really fast, and it's a very powerful tool. Oops, don't need to run that again. So data elements. I want to let you know that this script runs about 300 different data elements. Some of those are simple as the patient name, their date of birth, their sex, their address, their insurance, just a ton of data elements. And what is a data element? It's basically anything that you're going to type into your application. So there are three types of data elements that I believe in. There's the static, the dynamic, and the dynamic. And so a static example would be address or a phone number. You don't necessarily need those to change every time you run a script. We typically always use the exact same address and phone number for our patients. But dynamic ones that are required are things like date of birth or social security number. You can't have the same patient name with the same date of birth. So you need to have some unique data elements. Another thing that I call is dynamic, and that's data elements that are based off of another data element. So like our insurance, I may do a Medicare patient, and I'm not going to do that to a 12-year-old, but I'll do it to a 65-year-old. Or maybe the policy number. So I'll have a Blue Cross policy number versus another insurance policy number. So the question is, do I enter 300 items prior to each run? That is a lot of data elements. Well, no, not even close. I can't imagine putting that as a requirement for somebody to have to come up with that many questions. So I essentially start with two simple questions for my max. I ask them, does this clinic use a single real provider for scheduling, and does the provider select a level of service? If those two questions are yes, then I'll have them fill out the following 9 items. So so example, right now we're going into our October MAC test cycle. So I've got the project name, I've got whether or not it's a pediatric or adult. I don't want to test an adult in a pediatric department or a pediatric in a labor and delivery department. Desired sex. Again, labor delivery, I'd need a female. Desired age ranges, pediatric. If you're in a NICU, I'm going to have a 0 to 1 age range. Then I also have the Epic department name with the ID, the visit type, the provider that we're scheduling that with, along with their SER ID. Those are just really key data elements, and it with those 9 simple items, I can get through the entire MAC process. So I'm kind of giving some stuff away. I think Dave's on the call, and hopefully I don't butcher this too bad. But Dave talks about the 0 state, this idea that you have to know exactly what you're testing and get to that point. So one thing that you have in your manual test scripts is you start out entering the login information for your front desk person or whatever. But the 0 state for that is there's an automatic assumption that you've already got Epic launched, you're already logged into Windows, you already know who that front desk person is, and so what you're going to end up doing is creating a lot of utility scripts ahead of time, just to make sure that you're logged into Windows, to make sure that you have your Windows didn't time out and lock the Windows. You're going to need to make sure that you can launch Epic in the correct version of Epic, or whatever your application is. And then, as you saw in the video, there's a lot of things that I need to do ahead of time to test a patient in a particular clinic. I need to make sure that the display template is set up so that you can schedule to that provider on that day at that moment in that department. I also need to make sure that I run my EMP setup so that that provider I can log in as, and make sure that everything is set up to be able to do that. A login is another huge. It seems like it's so simple, but it's a pretty intense utility script, because you need to make sure that you are getting the login. Well, some logins have a job title, some get a department, some don't get a department, some get a message of the day. Some of them get report settings after they log in. So there's a lot of pieces to the login. And then the other big utility script that took some time was finding a patient on a schedule, and I'm still kind of struggling with some of that. We'd gotten to the point where we talked about not even looking at the schedule, because that can be unit tested. But we just recently had a couple clinics that needed to be scheduled to a generic provider, and then do a change provider workflow, and the change provider workflow in Epic was only available through the schedule. So I'm still struggling with that piece. But so the road ahead, what does that look like? Well, I still plan on expanding on our current outpatient workflows. Like I said, I've got the standard ambulatory workflow, but it would be nice to be able to schedule maybe to multiple providers, do a charge capture. Right now, I only do level of service. If I do a charge capture, again, these are all data elements that I'm going to need input in beforehand, and in order to be able to run this, so that I know exactly which level of service or which charge that I'm capturing. The current level of service is a generic. I always use the same one for our testing. Eventually, I'd like to see that as a little more robust. Maybe choose other LOSs. Continue existing work on our inpatient workflows. So we've started to work on some of the inpatient workflows, and I've been able to leverage a lot of the ambulatory pieces that I've already built, like vitals. Vitals, I did well, I've done almost everything purely in text. I do very little image capture because with Epic, things change all the time, wording changes, and even though Eggplant does a great job of being able to go through and update your images, I've been working with text for so long with Eggplant. I just have felt more comfortable looking for text and changing the text if I need to. So, but anyways, whoops. As part of that uh, continuing work on the inpatient is looking at patient movement, expanding coverage. So um, one of the things that everybody focuses on is well, how many number of scripts do you have? And oh, can't remember who it was, but with the AI model and models in general, you can start expanding your coverage without necessarily having more scripts. It's just more data elements, right? Um, and so one of the things that we originally started with our manual testing was we were at over 30 Epic scripts to every time we did an upgrade or a service pack or anything like that. We eventually got that down to 20 scripts, and now we're down to about 10. And most of those scripts are run a lot of the same workflows, just in different departments or different locations. And so I think as we expand automated testing and we can say, okay, well, today we're going to be scheduling at this hospital, but tomorrow we'll be scheduling at that hospital. Um, and it's just a matter of randomizing what those are. So um, the next thing we're going to be working on is downstream systems. So our packs, our bed systems, anything that touches Epic, and then the future is going to hopefully hold uh, mobility testing, testing all the mobile applications that interact with Epic, and as well as AI for Eggplant. We've pretty much solely been doing just the developer version of Eggplant. Um, and I'd like to see us get more into the AI version. Now, one thing that I wanted to also talk about is this idea of utility scripts or process automation. So process automation is wash, rinse, and repeat. This is any tasks that you have that are very repetitive, very repeatable, and that add value to automate. Um, some of those examples would be patient creation. We all have to create patients. For Epic, Epic actually recommends not using their utility to create patients because you don't necessarily always get a unique identifier, or there's some issue like that. And the nice thing about patient creation is you're testing that front end work. You're making sure that front desk person can actually do what they need to do. Um, Patient scheduling, another utility. We on the QA team, we're kind of unique. We're shifting our focus, but we had been just a pure manual testing team, and so versus a lot of Epic QA teams are more of a coordination. They'll have the unit or the application teams test the Epic. We're starting to change that as we move into more automation, where we've got a couple of our QA people that are starting to do the coordination piece. Well, one of the big things that we get is in our requests is, hey, can you schedule a patient for us, or can you admit a patient for us, rather than going over to the Cadence or Grand Central teams and get that done. So one thing I wanted to make sure is, now that we've been able to create a patient, I want to be able to schedule a patient and admit a patient, so that people can test and do all of this without having to just engage us every time they need a couple of patients. And so we're working with our actual ticket system group to produce a somebody will create a ticket, request patient, request scheduling. That'll drop into a file. Eggplant will pick it up and then spit out a list of patients for that request. So that's the near future piece that we're having. Another thing for process automation, tab return. This was a request from our one of our PAX groups. They had an application that they needed to, I believe, change modalities or the test modalities or something along those lines. And I jokingly talk about this tab return because this was a process request, and it was the whole idea being that it you just had to do this. They needed tab done 800 times and then a return. Well, after you get into it, you find out the actual requirements was a lot different. But when I first got it, I got an example of what the eggplant code would be. Simple 4-line, but number of times you need to hit tab, type tab, keep repeating until you finally get to the end of your 800 and hit return. The reality is that it ended up being probably about a page or two of code. But ultimately, even though it is a one-off scenario, when I talk about trying to get things that are repeatable or things that add value to the company, for this particular instance, it was going to cost our company like $5,000 to accomplish this task, and it took us afternoon to essentially set this up with Eggplant. So it did save the company money, and that was a nice thing to see happen. Another process animation that I got was process automation that was requested was every time that they do a update in our environments was they have to do an environment validation. We've got a couple dozen different environments, and so this was a tedious process. And so what this utility would do is it would go and launch Epic on the different environments, log in, go to the help and about, log all the information, drop it into a spreadsheet, and then present to somebody that can see, okay, this has all the correct ones we need. The other thing that I've been working on recently is our disaster recovery. So we have a product that we use in order to fail over all of our virtual machines, and we wanted to test that software by being able to run a disaster recovery, and eventually the process will be not just testing the test system, but also possibly leveraging this to fail over devices a lot quicker. So I'm looking forward to expanding on that. I think that's all I've got. So now we're to the Q&A part. And I think Olivia had to step out, so I am running this on my own, so bear with me. Oops, where'd my screen go there? Okay, I'll leave that up there. Q&A. You guys are going to make this easy on me, so. I think we may be at time. Thank everybody that's attended. One of the things that I wanted to put out there, a little plug for Dave there, but the iMethods team has been fantastic to work with, and one of the things that I would recommend if you're starting your eggplant journey, you reach out to them and talk about maybe getting a start on. They can help you build some of those initial utility scripts to get moving on and a little bit quicker. Even though my title is a developer, I always learn best by doing reverse engineering. So it always helps me to see a roadmap. Jeff, what's my starting point for test automation? Well, manual test scripts is definitely a good thing to have, but I also felt like our test scripts were pretty well detailed, but like I said, we had a lot of things that we just didn't really need to test. In our family history, we'd put in the names of the um, father and mother, and those were just not necessarily something that we needed to test every single time. Oh, I do have a question. How am I surviving without tailgating? Good question, Dave. So Dave got. I was fortunate enough to get Dave up here to Boise last year, but actually about this time last year, because we actually ended up going to Oktoberfest, as well as seeing a Boise State game, not in person, but unfortunately, with COVID, things have gotten different. But at least the good news is Boise State's going to be playing on the 24th, so I'm excited about that. But it was a great time that Dave and I had. So I think that's it. So I'm gonna call it. Thanks again for everybody. Oh, did you model a standard amulet for an eggplant AI first? Oh, oh, vandals! Come on, Jeff. No, I wish we still had the BSU and the Vandals playing against each other. That was a great rivalry. Um, so no, I did not model an AI first. This is another thing that I would highly recommend if you're just getting started, is start with AI, because I kind of feel like we're going to be kind of behind the curve trying to get over into AI, and I think we're going to have to shift gears quite a bit to do what I need to do. Is there another question? Oh, just that one. So, um, Jeff, hopefully, I don't know if I don't think I met you at the Eggplant regular conference, but hopefully, once all this clears up, we'll have an in-person conference one of these days. I wish I could have gone down to Baylor Scott, and we did this down there, because those guys are great. And so I feel like I'm talking to myself right now. So I'm gonna hang up here, and again, thanks for attending.